Hi, my name's Sean and welcome to my new YouTube channel Because Hobby. As you can see, today we're going to be working with the Warhammer 40,000 paints and tools set, and we're going to make use of that to paint a Ultramarines Assault Intercessor. This kit comes with enough paints to paint both Necrons and Space Marines, but today we're just going to be painting the Space Marine, so you won't need all the paints in the kit. So let's get the paints we need now. So the paints we need is going to be Necron Blue, Abaddon Black, Rune Lord Brass, Lead Belcher, Mephiston Red, Corax White, Rune Fang Steel, and Retributor Armour. We're also going to use a shade paint called Agrax Earthshade, and a technical paint called Astro Granite. But to start with, we don't need all those paints, we just need the first 5 you see here. So let's get our Assault Intercessor. I have one here, he's been undercoated with the spray paint, Chaos Black, but that's the same paint as Abaddon Black. So if you don't have a spray can available, you can just paint it with your Abaddon Black. Now of course, because Ultramarines are blue, we're going to begin with Necron Blue. So give it a good shake before you open it. And get your starter brush. And just get a little bit on your brush and pop it on your palette. Now you don't need a palette, you can use a plate or a tile, but I've got a little palette here. You add a little bit of water to that, just dip it in the water and add it to the paint. You want it nice and thin. You kind of want a milky sort of consistency to the paint, and then you can test the coverage on your nail. As you can see, mine's fine, so I'm just going to start coating the whole model, all of the model, in Necron Blue. I'm just going to coat the entire model with it. Coat it not once but twice, so you wait for the first coat to dry, and then you paint the entire model again. Of course, I'm not going to bore you with watching me paint the entire model, so I'll just bring you back when it's done. Okay, so now he's all done. As you can see, I've ordered the chainsword and the bolter, but you didn't have to. And we are going to now move on to using Abaddon Black to cover all the pieces we want black. So again, give it a good shake. As you can see, I like to give them a good shake to make sure they're all mixed up. And we're going to be painting the creases in the armour, the backs of the power pack, the weapons, both the bolter and the chainsword, as with the blue and all the other paints we're going to be using today, you want to again put it on the palette as you did before. I'll just pull it forward a little bit to show you, and you just dip your paint in the water and add it to the paint on the palette. Again, you're looking for that milk-like consistency, and you can test the coverage on the back of your nail. If as you lay it, it's pulling away, you probably need to add a little bit more paint. Be careful when you're applying it to try not to get it on the armour, but if you do, I probably will a few times, just wait for it to dry and cover it up again with some blue. just while we let this footage of me painting all the black go, I'd just like to apologise for the camera angle. I have ordered new equipment to make sure I can have a top-down view for the next video, so that's exciting. Okay, and I'll get the rest of this black done, and I'll bring you back when it's all dry and finished. So here he is with all the black areas finished. As you can see on camera, I'm just pointing out some areas you might want to pay extra special attention to, like the vents on the backpack. If you make any mistakes, just make sure you clean it up after it's dry with a bit of the Macragge blue, and you're good to go. So now we're going to move on to Rune Lord Brass. This is a metallic paint, and we're going to be painting the chest eagle and the shoulder pad trim. So give this a very, very good shake. Metallic paints need an extra good shake. And again, just get a little bit on your brush and pop it on the palette. Just take that little bit of water and add it to the palette. Now here in a moment, I'm actually going to use too much. And I'm going to do what's called over thinning the paint. And you don't want that. It's not good. If you over thin the paint, you're going to have an issue where it just sort of spreads and pulls and it doesn't dry quite right, and it's just going to look awful. So if that does happen, just do what I do here. Just open the paint and just add a little bit more of that paint to the palette. So there I am again, testing coverage on my nail. I'm happy with that. So I'm going straight on the chest eagle now. I'm just removing some of the excess on my hand. You don't have to do that, you can use a tissue. But you're just holding the model like that and just sort of stroking the brush along the chest eagle, barely having contact with it. You just want to get that whole chest eagle coated. You should be quite careful with the tips, you can easily hit the armour, but if you do, just simply wait for it to dry, and again just cover up any mistakes with Macragge blue. I'm going to do the shoulder pads and I'll bring you back. Thought I'd bring you back to show you my technique with the shoulder pads, just the trim. So what you're doing is just hold the model again with the brush the same way you had it held for the chest eagle, and just stroke that brush just along the trim, and that's possibly the best way I know to make sure you don't make contact with the blue part of the shoulder pad. Okay, so all the Rune Lord Brass is done. As you can see, I've done the chest eagle, the shoulder pad, and also I forgot to mention the crest on his left arm. So now we're going to be using lead belcher. Make sure you give it a very, very good shake, as with all the paint. And again, just pick up just enough on your brush, put it on the palette, just get enough as you need, and then add water to it again to thin it down. So this isn't the greatest shot in the world, but what we're trying to do is coat the areas that need to be silver in lead belcher. So those are the vents on the backpack that we previously painted black, and then for reference you can use the box art, but we're making sure that all parts of the bolt gun that need to be silver are silver, and all parts of the chainsaw that need to be silver are silver as well. There's also the sides of his helmet, and the little tubes that go to the front breathing mask of his helmet too. As ever, just try to be careful to stay within the lines of the part you're trying to paint, but don't feel too bad if you move outside of them. It's very easy to tidy up, especially with a darker paint like a Blood and Black. But of course I'm not going to make you sit through me painting the entire model, so I'll bring you back once all the lead belcher parts are done. So here he is with all the silver parts done in lead belcher. As you can see, the mod's really starting to come together in my opinion. So yeah, I've just cleaned up all my mistakes really, made sure that everything's had 2 thin coats, and we're going to move on to the next paint, which is Mephiston Red. Give this one a good shake. And then get your starter brush and just pop a little bit on your palette. You don't need too much of this red. Red's quite an awkward one to thin down as well, just make sure you've got that right. Now I've completely cleaned my brush this time because I need to paint the eyes, and eyes can be a real problem. They're not so bad on Space Marines, but you just need to be careful to stay inside the lines. So just lie him down so he's completely steady. You can see me, I'm in shot here, and you just want to go from the back of the eye just with the tip of the brush into the eye. If you do go outside of the eye, just clean it up with Macragge Blue as ever. And the other thing we're painting is just the wax on the purity seal that's on his leg here. Your model may not have a purity seal, that's absolutely fine, some do, some don't. Generally the more character related models are the ones with the most purity seals, but this one does have one. So you just want to paint that up with the Mephiston Red. You may need 3 coats with red because red's quite a bad colour for coverage. So just make sure you've got a nice bright red and you can't see any of the black through it before you move on. As you can see, my makeshift painting handle there just failed me. I need to pick up something a bit better, but if you use fresh blue tack on the paint pot, it's absolutely fine as a painting handle, and you don't even need a painting handle if you don't want to use one, it's not a problem. And that's me just getting the other eye, and I'll bring you back when that's done. So the red's done, and I made a few mistakes, so I've covered those up on the eyes. Just be very careful, and the purity seal as well. You can get it on the armour, but now we're going to move on to Corax White. So white is a very thick paint. Corax White in particular is very thick, so you need to make sure you give it a very good shake and thin it down an awful lot. You'll be adding a lot more water to any white than you will any other colour, and as we're painting onto a black undercoat, we're going to be using a lot of coats here. But the process is the same as always. We're just going to get that white, get a nice bit on your brush and pop it on the palette. Add in water until we've achieved that nice thin white that we're looking for. And we're just going to coat that purity seal, the paper or parchment, in white. It's probably going to take me 3 or 4 coats. I can't remember how many coats it took me when I recorded this, but it was easily 4. You just want to keep adding that, letting it dry, adding another coat, letting it dry until you can't see the black through the higher areas of the detail. Make sure you get on the back of that purity seal as well. That's something I miss quite often on my first pass. I look at the model and I see that I've missed the back of the purity seal. Just make sure you've got everything covered. It doesn't matter if you hit the armor. It's very, very easy to cover over white. And you're just going to keep painting that until it's done. I'll bring you back when mine is. Alright, so with that white done, we're going to move on to our shade paint, Agrax Air Shade, and we're going to use a technique here called panel lining or recess shading, whichever you prefer. So shake the paint as you would any other paint. We're not going to use the palette for this time, we're just going to take it straight from the pot. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a small amount of it on our brush, and every little crease and crack in the armor, we're just going to fill that with a nice healthy amount of Agrax Air Shade. Just enough to fill the recess but not spill out onto the actual armor itself. And we're just going to go over every single part of the armor like that. Well, at the same time, we're also going to paint the eagle. We're just going to put a small amount on the eagle, just enough to fill the recesses, and we'll leave that to dry. I'll come back once I've done all the panels. So here he is with all the recess shading and panel lining done, and as you can see, I think he looks a lot better. It really helps to make the model pop. It adds an outline to everything, kind of like the game Borderlands if you've played that, and it just sort of makes the model look a lot more 3D. But what we're going to do now is move on to something called edge highlighting. You've probably heard of it, and if you haven't, I'm going to show you how to do it now. So we need Macragge blue and white, and we're also going to need Retributor armor and Runefang steel. We're going to begin with the Macragge blue. As ever, give it a shake. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the Macragge blue and we're going to put that on our palette. Make sure you clean your brush after that, because you're going to need the white, Corax white. Give that one a shake as well, and add it to the blue on your palette. We're aiming for a lighter blue, so we're going to mix them together. Just make sure you mix them nicely on the palette. It's about a 1-to-1, so one brush full of Macragge blue to one brush full of Corax white. Just mix that round on your palette. Make sure it's a lighter blue. It helps to have it next to a patch of the normal Macragge blue for reference. But once you've got that, don't worry about thinning it down. Just make sure you wipe most of the excess off, either on your hand like me or on a tissue, and then you're going to take the edge of your brush. I'm trying to find a good angle here to show you. You're just going to take the edge of your brush, and any hard edge on the armor that you want to highlight, you're just going to gently touch the edge of that and just run it along. Just run the brush along the edge of the armor. And just do that for the whole model. I'm going to do that now off camera, and I'll bring you back to show you how it looks when it's done. Okay, so here he is, all edge highlighted. All the blue armor panels have been edge highlighted. As you can see, I don't go for the full aggressive heavy metal style edge highlight. I think it's too much. Just do as much as you like. We're going to move on to edge highlight in the black areas now. So just the weapon, the pouches and the chainsword. We're going to use a Baden black. So pop a bit of that on the palette. And we're going to mix that with Corax white, much like the Macragge blue. So a 1-to-1 ratio there, same as before. It's going to come out as sort of a dark grey, which I find is very nice for edge highlight in black. Just make sure that's nicely mixed on your palette. Really make sure you mix it round. And like before, just get the excess off on either the edge of your hand or a tissue. And we're just going to use the same technique as before. We're going to do that on the weapons and the pouches. So now that all the black's highlighted, we're just going to move on to the gold areas, so the eagle and the shoulder pads. And for that we're going to use retributive armor. Make sure you give it a good shake. Like I said, metallic paints, they really need a good shake. And you only need a little bit for this, so just make sure you only get a little bit on your brush to put on your palette. You're not going to be using very much at all. And just use that same stroking technique on the eagle, so you're only catching the raised areas to leave those recesses nice and dark. Just make sure you do that all over the model. So long as you're not putting too much pressure, you shouldn't hit any of the armor. But again, if you do, just go back to that Macragge blue as always and just bring it back to a nice flat blue. And just repeat that process for the edge of the shoulder pads. So with the gold done, we're going to move on to Runefang steel for the silver areas of the armor. So on the chainsword, the bolt weapon, anything you painted silver before, I'm just going to grab that Runefang steel, give it a very good shake. And again, you don't need much for this, just a little bit on your palette. You're not going to be using a whole lot on the model, so don't waste your paint. Be sure to remove that excess. What we're doing, you can't really see it because of the angle, I do apologise for that, but we're just picking out the edges, like on the magazine of the weapon, just the edge of the barrel, and on the edge of any metal areas of the chainsword. So with that done, we're on to the final step of the model. He's finished, and I've got a scenic base. You may not have a scenic base, so I'm going to show you how to use Astro Granite, which is the technical paint you'll receive. I've got a spare base here from Indomitus. So what we're going to do with this technical paint is we're going to give it a shake, which I did off camera, and you're going to take a spreading tool. It doesn't have to be a sculpting tool or the technical tool from Games Workshop. This is the one I've got here, but you could use a flat piece of card or plastic, just anything that's hard enough to spread it all over the base. You can use as thick or as thin layer as you like. Just make sure you get even coverage all over it. If you get it on the rim of the base, don't be too concerned because it's quite easy to scrape off. But you're just going to get it all over the base like you can see me doing here, and then you just pop it to one side and wait for it to dry. It can take a couple of hours, but once it's dry you can put your mini onto it, or if you've been painting the mini on the base, you can just simply wait for it to dry. And with that, we've come to the end of the video. As you can see on screen now, I painted my scenic base up and I popped grass tufts on it. I think the grass tufts look quite nice with the brown, and I've painted the base rim grey because I think that contrasts quite well with the rest of the model. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a like or subscribe or even comment. Comment if you didn't like the video, tell me what I'm doing wrong. At the time of recording this, I've actually already recorded the next video, and that will be out soon with a much better camera angle, and I think you'll quite enjoy it. Hopefully you'll have as much fun watching it as I did making it. If you like, you can follow me on Instagram. The Instagram handle's in the channel banner, and I'd love to see your painted models and have a chat if you want to talk about anything. So until next time, just keep painting.